You ready, Mitch? All right. Call to order for special work session for the Watertown City Council. We are going to, it's not listed on our agenda, but we are going to start with a prayer and a pledge, so everyone please rise. We're going to let our councilman, Shuddy, say the prayer. Thank you very much. Finance Officer Bob Zine, would you please call, roll call?
Yes. Thank you, Mayor. Bueller?
Here.
Danforth?
Here.
Holeen?
Here.
Paulson?
Here.
Shuddy?
Here.
Tupper?
Here.
Vilhauer?
Here.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. We have a quorum present. The chair will entertain a motion for the approval of the agenda. Actually, do we even need to for a special session, Matt? Oh, yes. Okay.
So
Moved by Councilman Vilhauer, seconded by Councilman Bueller. All those in favor, say aye. Aye. Opposed, nay. Motion carried. With that said, before we move on to our regular agenda, just a few comments from the chair regarding the work session. The City of Watertown is in a new era of government. As everyone knows, we transitioned into a city manager form of government. With the new government comes new ideas. And some of them are necessitated and some of them are just, we think that we can do business better. We have fewer council members now, so gone are the days where you could have 4 or even 5 councilmen or council people in a committee doing research outside of regular council meetings. Now with fewer council members, we can only have 3 people in any committee. So the idea was, and that's like almost too few of people to share ideas and come up and then bring it back to the group. So the idea is to have some of these work sessions where we can all get together and tackle some of the information so that we're all on the same page, and then when it comes time for more proper deliberation, we will be more equipped to do our jobs better. This is an idea that our city manager, Amanda Mack, has brought to us. I think it's a great idea. We're going to give it a try, and this is how we are hopefully going to be going forward with some of our business in the future. Just for everyone's knowledge, tonight's meeting is going to be just informational. There's no action going to be taken. This is just to update a lot of different projects that the City of Watertown, that this council has inherited from previous councils in previous years. We have a lot of exciting possibilities for the future of Watertown, a lot of projects, and this is just to update where we are at with some of these projects, the status of them, possibly some steps for the future. We are not going to be lost in speculative questions about why don't we try this or why not this. This is just informational where we are at currently. Some questions are welcome, but questions can be asked, but they are not necessarily going to be answered tonight. We will log some questions and then we can get back at future times when we are actually going to be taking more substantive action. So tonight's is just informational, and that is the intent. And with that said, we will start with information on one of our big projects, the airport terminal. We'll go to Airport Manager Todd Cyree, please.
Thank you, Mayor. At this time, I'm going to share my screen. Give me a second, please. Let me know when you can see it, please.
We got it.
Okay. So I'm going to try and wrap around from 2019 to current today, how this project got started and where we ended up today. Obviously, we have a lot of work going forward to complete this project, but this is hopefully good information for the new council. So before you here, I have the the engineering estimates and actual prices for the terminal project as a whole. I'll run through these line by line. So the SRE building, and this is not in order anyway. So the SRE building is in phase 2 of the terminal. I do have engineering
Excuse me,
estimates here.
Airport Manager Cyree, could you possibly make the spreadsheet larger? I mean, zoom in possibly on the items that you're talking about. We're having a hard time seeing it here in the council chambers. Thank you. And then you might have to just move around your screen, but that helps a lot. Thank you.
Okay. Okay. Sorry. I'm trying not to give you too much viewing displeasure here. So SRE building engineering architect and engineering estimates for the SRE came in at 3.9 million for engineering estimates. Total project came in at 3.2. So with engineering services and the alternates, total engineering estimate was 4.3. Actual costs came in at 3.224, which was 25% under engineering estimates. I'll go back. Same thing, engineering estimates for the terminal building itself. Total engineering estimate was 12.194 million. The price came in at 10.232 million, about 16% under engineering estimates. Terminal site phase 2. This would be all the site civil work for the terminal building. This would be the apron on the air side, and then parking lot, sidewalks, everything to do with civil work, air side and land side. So the engineering estimates came in at 6.6 million. Project was bid and came back at 5.93 million, about a 10% under engineering estimates. Terminal, let's see here, air carrier ramp. This is the partial air carrier ramp. This is the portion that the FAA let us go back out for bid for due to the money coming in better than we anticipated. So this is an additional project that we pulled out of phase 2, essentially, if that makes sense. So we did the work in phase 1 due to the fact that we didn't use all of our grant money. So we went back out for bid for more concrete work. The engineer's estimate on that was 1.086 million. Actually came in at $672,000, 38% under engineering estimates. So we actually have some more money, and I'll get into that detail here in a second, due to the bids coming in. So combined all engineering estimates and combining the actual bids or actual money we are spending here, 25 million versus 21 million actual money. So we came in total project at about 16.7% under engineering estimates completely. And I'll hold there. Is there any questions on that? I know we kind of went back and forth, but is there any questions so far? I don't want to miss anybody. Okay, I will stop sharing this screen and I'm going to share another screen. Let me know when you can see it. I'll try and zoom in the best I can.
We can see it.
Okay.
But yes, some zooming in would be appreciated.
Zooming in. Okay. Sorry. That better?
Yes,
Or
thank you.
Okay. This is going to be a lot of information. And like I said, I will send out all of this information to Amanda to get to you guys, disseminate to you guys. So you can review it. If you have any questions later, if it comes back, let me know, but I'll run through this real quick. I know the council wanted to know what the FAA share was, what the city share was, what the state match was, and then total project, how that all shook out. So I'm going to run through this kind of quick here. This is a 2020 entitlement grant. So because we hit 10,000 employments or more a year, we get a $1 million entitlement grant every year. And essentially, we do a project every year at the airport. More times than not, it's more than $1 million. So what they do is they essentially take the $1 million from us and take it off total federal share, if that makes sense. And I can go into more detail if that doesn't. But essentially, the projects we do, they take our $1 million every year and it goes towards the project, and then the feds come up with the rest of the money, the remainder of the money for the project. So in 2020, we had an ARF cart. We had civil design, we had terminal design, and then we had terminal design in a multi-year grant. And I will have one of our architects and engineers that's on the phone maybe discuss a little bit more in depth of a multi-year grant. So for instance, the terminal project came in at 74.75% eligible. That's total project. There are bits and pieces of it, and this is where it gets confusing. So there are bits and pieces of it that became 100% eligible due to the COVID money that we've received through the federal government here in the last year. I'll keep it simple. The terminal is 74.75% federally eligible. The remainder of that is split between the sponsor share and the state share. The state for terminal buildings only gives $200,000 for a state project on a terminal building. So we had $200,000 in state share. Along with this, we had more money that came in, and it's called the CARES Act share, which took the project from 90% to 100% match federally. As you see here, there's no sponsor share. The CARES Act 10% actually covered for some of this, the 10% sponsor share. So I'll get into the details here. So in 2020, the entitlement grant total was $1.854 million. Here's the sponsor share that we paid. Here's the CARES Act, what they paid. And then here's the federal percent, 90%, $1.366 million for these 4 projects. Now, getting into the nuts and bolts of the terminal, here's our 2019 supplemental grant. And I think, as you all recall, the newspaper hit it with a huge article. We received $9 million for a terminal project. And that was a supplemental grant for phase 1, because obviously they knew the terminal was going to cost more than $9 million. But this was the supplemental grant that we got awarded in December of 2019. And here's the costs broke down. Building construction, civil construction. We have terminal building, alternate bids here. We have some gas work and fiber optics, utilities. We have partial air carrier ramp. The other partial air carrier ramp that we went back out for bid for. We have some portions of the civil bidding, construction admin, some testing, and then some change orders come in. We do have administration as well for this bid. Administration is essentially a term we use for contingency money. In the FAA's eyes, we can't use the word contingency, so we use administration. So if you see grants in the future that have administration, it's just a little bit of contingency money. We try and keep it about 5 to 10% of the total project. So I'll slide over here. So we have federal share here, the state share, sponsor share, and then the total estimated cost. So I'll just kind of peruse down here. $9 million is the supplemental grant. The 247 is the state share. The 3.5 million for this grant is the city share for a total project, adding all these numbers together for $12.7 million. Any questions? Okay. We'll get into the grant number 38 here. So this has a lot of stuff in it too. This is the phase 2 and SRE, snow removal equipment building. The FAA said, instead of doing 2 grants, we're going to do 1 grant, bid the project as 2 separate projects. For the snow removal equipment building, which would be a maintenance shop essentially, due to the fact to where the new terminal is, we had to relocate or destroy the maintenance shop. The maintenance shop was roughly 60 years old. The first building, the second building, we are actually relocating in the tune of about $88,000 for that building to be relocated and used for not only airport, but we can use that as a city building for storage. It's not going to be inside the fence. It'll actually be a through the fence operation for the relocation of the second building. So with all that said, here is the line by line items. Passenger boarding bridge. As you might have noted, the passenger boarding bridge came in under estimate. And this gives out a breakout of the eligibility for the SRE building now. So the terminal came in at 74.75%. This is at 97.27% eligible, meaning the federal government will pick up 97.27% of that total project. A lot of these items got put up into the 100% eligible ratio due to the COVID money. I know there's a lot of information here, and I'm hoping that you guys have questions later on for me to maybe explain some of this more in detail. I'm just trying to give you the overall picture of how we do this, where we started and where we ended. So the total project, go ahead.
No, I don't think there was a question. I'll tell you, Manager Cyree, I will interrupt you if there is a question. Otherwise, just proceed.
Okay, thank you. So federally funded, we had $9 million. We had the shortfall, which we're picking up, like I said, with the remainders of the monies in this project. I'll go into more detail here when we get through this. So here's the multi-year 22 and 23. Mike Schmidt from Helms and Associates is on the line, and I'm going to have him kind of explain what a multi-year grant is.
Thanks, Todd. Can everybody hear me?
Yes.
All right. So with the program dollars and having a federal funding shortfall to complete all the project under one grant, what the FAA allows sponsors to do is multi-year their construction projects. What that means is the city is committing their next couple of years worth of entitlement dollars, which you guys get $1 million a year based off of your achieving 10,000 employments. So what the current FAA bill runs through 2023. So through 2023, you can multi-year your project and utilize your future entitlement dollars to fund any funding shortfalls or gaps in your current project. So based on the federal funding shortfall, Todd just kind of got it showing the area of that table where your 2022 dollars, your $1 million of entitlements will be utilized to fund the shortfall. And then for the remaining shortfall is going to be $341,000 of your 2023 entitlements. Now, it gets a little trickier as you look at the bottom 2 lines with the additional grant in 2023. With the SRE building and the access road going to it from Taxiway Alpha, we are constructing that to taxiway standards due to the fact that you currently have no place for a private hangar to be constructed on the airport. So we're kind of killing 2 birds with 1 stone. So you can see that total cost of $90,000. What that is the difference between an access road and a taxi lane. So the FAA will fund the access road with this project, but they just cannot, due to the discretionary dollars, cannot fund a taxi lane with the discretionary. So in 2023, you will actually get an amendment to your existing grant, plus you will get a separate grant to fund the that 90,000, which is the difference between an access road and a taxi lane. In addition, you can see below what we would like to intend to do, and this is estimated, and we don't have to do this at this time, but it's going to be the best time to do it, would be to construct about a 150-foot stub of hangar taxi lane out to provide you guys a few spots for future potential private hangars to be built out there. As I said, it's amazing how many hangars have been constructed at the airport the last 5 to 10 years, along with the city-funded T hangars. I don't know where everybody came from, but boy, they sure flocked to Watertown and put up structures or park their aircraft there. So I'll kind of stop there if there's any questions, or if everyone understands what I was trying to state there with the multi-year.
Thank you, Mike. So essentially, another portion of this is the FAA does not want to build a taxiway to nowhere. So with the entitlement dollars, this project would have happened anyway. We're just saving ourselves the hassle and time later on of going through and building instead of tearing up the access road in 2 years and building a taxiway, we're actually just building it to taxiway standards and stubbing out 150 feet to give us roughly 3 stalls in case somebody comes knocking for a private hangar. As we've filled in the last 5 years, we've had 9 private hangars go up. The state and the FAA have been very supportive of Watertown in giving us extra funding in the last 5 or 6 years for extra taxi lane to build out our taxiways for private hangar areas. It's just fortunate, but unfortunate, that we have all of the stalls filled. So the last stall is actually under construction right now with the building going up. And what this will do is this will speed up this process about 3 years. We won't have to wait for that taxiway and stub out to be done, along with tearing up infrastructure that we put in this year, which didn't make much sense to us or the FAA. So with that, I will stop. I think this is a lot of information. I'll quit talking about the numbers right now, and I'll get into some questions that we had. So sorry, I'll turn my camera on. We had some questions come in. So if the cost could change, whose costs are these covers? Are these costs covered by who? In this chart here, it showed the FAA share, the state share, and the sponsor share. So if there is a change order that would come through, depending on the eligibility, whether it become 100%, the 97% for the SRE, or the 74.75%, that is how the share would be broke apart. The FF&E for the terminal is actually under grant through Gray Construction. I believe the price is just under $400,000 is what they bid for the FF&E. So that's all covered. I think we went through the project scope and costs for each party. And the O&M budget was another question that got brought up by numerous people. Going to a new building, 3 times the size, we are looking at that with Amanda Mack and Heath Von I and my staff. We're getting some other airports involved that have had terminal projects in the past. We will be requesting 2 staff members, full-time staff members for next year for some various duties, but we can go through all of that in the budget process. And I can speak more to that during that process when we get all the information gathered. The current status and estimated completion time. So we were going to go out for bid phase 2 in the SRE building in May of this year. The FAA held us back until June to go out for bid due to the fact that they didn't have the money allocated yet. So it slowed us down about 3 months essentially, and we are in the process of awarding a contract on phase 2 and SRE, as you've seen. The completion date has moved from roughly April timeframe of 2022 to June timeframe of 2022. And that's due to the wintertime construction with asphalt. is the big concern that we have going into the phase 2 portion of this. So we extended the date of completion for contractors to finish the asphalt early next spring. Is there any questions on that for me?
On the entire presentation or just on that topic?
Absolutely. Hit me with whatever you got.
Well, I
That's all we can
actually will start the questions. I want to provide everyone the opportunity tonight. The first question that I would have is regarding this project. How may this benefit the city of Watertown?
So in 2010, we had an economic impact study done by the state DOT. They do it every 10 years. In 2010, the economic impact for the city of Watertown and surrounding areas was about $20 million. In 2020, they did the same survey, and the economic impact value was between 80 and $90 million. So that tells you what an airport can provide a community just for economic impact of having the airport here. I believe in 2030, it's going to be much higher than that. So I guess with all that said, we have 2 airlines right now. I can give you numbers from last week. We ran out of 200 seats total. We were averaging 175 a day for enplanements flying out. So people are noticing the Watertown Airport. They're using the airport. We have extremely good rates right now. And I think it's just going to keep growing from here.
Thank you very much. Are there any questions from the council? Councilman Danforth.
Yeah, hi Todd. Couple of questions. You talk about all the phasing and all the dollars. What's the, if we were to aggregate all of this and from our standpoint look at it as the airport project, what's the bottom line? What's the bottom line dollar for the project? Is that the 21.053, and then what is the share in dollars aggregately for the federal government or the FAA, the state, and for the city? What's the bottom line on each one of those?
I will refer that question to either Jeff Gard with Mead Hunt or Mike Schmidt with Helms and Associates. If you have that pulled up, I don't have that with me.
Todd, this is Mike. I got it pulled up. So if you add up everything, nuts to bolts, engineering, miscellaneous costs for utilities, admin, testing, everything, total project from start to finish, as of right now, as the costs are today, and there's some estimated costs for potential change orders and stuff like that, but we're at about 26.7 million. Just in a round number, Councilman Danforth. Of that, 21.06 million is a federal share. As Todd mentioned, the state share is a little bit lighter because they only contribute $200,000 to a terminal. And on top of that, with the COVID relief packages, that eliminates basically the state share. So the state share is about $247,900. City share right now is projected total project, again, from start to finish at 5.4 million. And I know Todd was probably going to talk about, where it was budgeted versus where it's sitting total project wise for 5.4 million. So that gives us, again, Mr. Councilman Danforth, 26.7 million total project.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mike. And I'll add to that, the city share should be at 4.7 million. We are still in debate with the FAA on a FAA TechOps reimbursable agreement is what it's specifically called. It's to move the instrument landing system and radios and communications for the FAA that is currently in the old building to relocate them to a different place on the airport. That is in the tune, we have it estimated right now at $700,000. The FAA told us immediately that that was eligible to get reimbursed. Just this year, they told us that that cost is no longer eligible, but they are working with every avenue they can to try and get that back eligible in the future so we can get reimbursed for that. But all things considered, that's where the overage is right now, as we sit today, for that 5.4 million city share versus the 4.7 million. So we will keep on the FAA with that. Like I said, this is a living, breathing document. We have meetings every week with the FAA and running through eligible versus not eligible. And we will do the best we can to get that number back down to what we have budgeted at the 5 million.
Any further questions? Councilman Vilhauer.
Thank you, Mayor. Todd or Mike, whoever wants to deal with this, you seem pretty certain in working with the feds in this as far as what they are going to be funding. I mean, we're also looking out a couple of years down the road on this. Is there any reason that we should be nervous or concerned? I mean, and work with the federal government that all of a sudden rules change and we're left holding the bag on something we're not expecting?
Thank you for the question, Councilman. No, we have no inklings of that happening. In all the years of the FAA funding these projects, we have never seen anything like that. So there's nothing that that gives us a bad feeling or a bad vibe that that the FAA would leave us hanging with this money.
Okay, thank you. One more follow-up question.
Councilman Vilhauer.
And maybe it's not appropriate in this setting, but I think the public would be interested, as well as some of us up here in the council dais, as far as, do you have any visuals that you could share fairly readily, or is that going to take some time to provide us? I know I was part of that planning committee. I saw all sorts of them, but it's been a while now since any of us have seen visuals of what to expect out there and what's all said and done.
Yes, I will leave that. I believe Mitch Walker is online from Mead and Hunt, and I believe he has some renderings he can show you.
Okay, thank you. If that's
While he's pulling those up, is there any other questions?
So I can hunt down the renderings here, or is the question more broadly, are we doing enough to engage the public in in really engaging, you know, what is going on at the airport? And should we set up a? Go ahead.
I'm sorry, Mitch. No, just purely informational for the public and for our own viewing, as far as what we can expect out there and what's all said and done.
Yeah, absolutely. And so we've worked with our partners in Co-op Architects out of Sioux Falls. You know, they put together some very nice renderings and a actual physical 3D model. And so that should be available. You know, we can work with the city to get some of those renderings and combine them with the actual construction images going on right now, and set those up at City Hall or out at the existing airport terminal right now is always a great way to engage that community of active flyers. So I'd be more than happy to work with Jason to set that up.
Mitch and Todd, this is, can you hear me? This is Jason Can with Co-op.
Hey, Jason.
If you would like me to, I can share those images right now if we do want to see them. We do have obviously the boards and the model out at the airport now, and we can actually provide boards at the City Hall too if we want them. But if you want to see the images right now, I can share my screen and show those.
Please do.
That'd be great.
You bet.
All righty, you seeing it?
We got it, Jason.
Okay, so we have you know, kind of a variety of renderings, but this here is an exterior shot of the outside of the building. This is the northwest corner, and you know, essentially this building is primarily precast walls on the bottom level. That's kind of this grayish color you see all along the bottom. The first level is essentially precast, kind of all the way around the building. The second story piece, which basically kind of goes over the public spaces along the front of the building, incorporates a lot of channel glass. That's this kind of glowing piece that you see here in the building. That's basically an opaque glass piece. And you know, at night there's lighting right behind that that'll kind of help that light up. During the daytime here, I'll pull up the next image. You know, that'll just be more of an opaque, you know, kind of glass piece, you know, similar to this image right here. So you won't be able to see through it, but you'll get some light transfer through there. And then there are kind of three clear glass components on each end. So this center one here is the primary entry. on the first level here, and then there's glass above that. And then on each end, when you're actually walking through the space, there's clear glass out both ends to kind of let light in from those components. So the next one's here. This piece here is the southwest corner. This is actually as you're approaching the terminal drop off here. This is actually where that would happen along the front of the building. So this is kind of the direction you would see here, and this is kind of where our signage will be as you approach the building. But there's an overhang kind of here which provides a shelter along there for the drop off and the pickup area, and again, as I mentioned, that entry component kind of centralized here in the middle. As we move into the building, so the next image will be from this centralized piece here, right when you're walking in the door. One of the main components that was talked about quite a bit when we were going through the design of this is just the view of this space, being able to kind of connect the public side with the air side and with the airplanes and people landing and kind of coming off there. So one of the really cool pieces that kind of came to fruition with that is this view here as you walk in. You can actually look out onto the airfield side here from this lower level piece, which is generally going to be open, but is also has a glass wall that can be closed in case this needs to be used as hold room from the secure side, or this kind of second floor mezzanine piece where you can actually go up and sit and just kind of enjoy the view and watch planes come in, or watch your family members fly off or arrive, any of that kind of stuff. The other component here obviously is some seating area and a little restaurant component to kind of create that lively public space in the center there. Off to the left side here, you catch the corner of what is the check-in counter. That is this view here, kind of looking down that hallway. So basically standing in the same spot and rotating, this is where check-in will be. So this is where the airline check-in will be. You continue down this hall. You can kind of see that glass on the exterior piece that I mentioned there at the end, but you continue down this hall, and that's where the bag claim is in the car rental space, kind of down at the end there. But that's the north wing. I don't have a great rendered view like this of the south wing, but basically on the opposite side of this is the checkpoint. So that's where you basically, when you come in, you would get your ticket at the ticket counter here, and then you would go over to the checkpoint on the other side, pass through screening and all of that, and get to the hold room. Got one or two more pictures that I can show quickly. This is the upper mezzanine piece. So the part that is always open to the public that can look out onto the airfield side. So there's some kind of lounge seating, some restaurant seating. The back portion here is also where the airport offices will be, where Todd's office is, and staff will be. And I think the last image I have here is of the hold room. So on the back side, once you've passed through the screening area, this is the southeast corner of the building. This is the hold room space. So we'd have our beam seating kind of in here, restrooms. That kitchen area actually is accessible from both sides. So there's a little bar area here in the corner to serve the secure side once you've passed through security. But this is kind of the gist of the hold room side. If you would like, I can pull up the floor plans. That might take me a minute to dig up here, but I can definitely share that as well if we want to look at the overall floor plan.
Thank you, though.
I got them up if need be, Jason, as kind of a tag team there. So if the council is interested in seeing updated floor plans.
I think the pretty pictures are sufficient.
They typically are.
So any other questions from the council? Councilman Danforth.
Todd or whomever on it, Mike, I'm going back to the numbers for a second. On the $21 million from the federal, does that $21 million include then the 2 years of anticipated EAS entitlements?
Do you mean the additional 2 years of the multi-year? Is that
right?
Is that the?
Right, in the council meeting we had, gosh, first week of July, it was referenced that there was a shortfall in funding and that we could apply the 2 years of EAS entitlements to offset that. So my question is, do these numbers represent the use of those EAS dollars that you talked about for what, 2020, where they, I'm not sure if they're, I think they're 2021 and 2022, I believe.
Councilman Danforth, I'll take that. Sorry, my mic was on mute. I tried to talk and it didn't say anything, but yes,
I do that a lot.
Total Project has it all lined out. I can send you a spreadsheet that has it all in black and white for you to see. It may make more sense if you can see it on paper, but yes. Did that answer your question?
I think I'll wait for the spreadsheet, Todd. It's probably the easiest way to do it and work through it.
Okay, yeah, and like I said, give me a call or stop out. We can run through the whole thing. In fact, we don't use all of our 2023 entitlements. So we are looking to maybe purchase an MB, which is a multi-use piece of equipment that we also have on our CIP, our capital improvement plan. We can probably fit that in under our just entitlements money in 23, but that's a long ways out. We'll get that to that bridge later.
Thank you. Any further council questions? City Manager?
Todd, could you just speak to the timeline on where we're at for completion and when the public may be able to get into the facility?
Absolutely. Thank you. So the timeline right now for the building completion is mid-March, and the phase 2 site civil work for the terminal is June, around the 15th of June, completion date for that. And then the snow removal equipment building, which is the maintenance shop, is October of 22.
Thank you.
Any other questions from the council? If not, this is Deputy Mayor Vilhauer. I am Mayor Holine is going to lead the next part of our meeting, dealing with the ice arena. So I will conduct the meeting in the meantime, but at this point I'll turn it over to Mayor Holine and you can take it away.
Thank you very much, Deputy Mayor. We took some liberty here to adjust the schedule of what we were going to discuss because we're actually paying this gentleman to be here. So in the sake of saving the city some money, we are going to shift the schedule so we can get him out of here faster. This is a brief presentation on the multipurpose ice facility. Next slide, please, Mitch. The current status of the project. The council unanimously agreed to the ice arena concept that was brought forward several months ago. This includes the site at the Lakes of Willow Creek location, the general idea of what we wanted with the ice arena, and a rough idea on the cost. We then signed a memorandum of understanding with the Watertown Development Company, Jesse Craig LLC, and J&J Earthworks. That MOU is still in effect, and we are still following it. That is giving us the template for moving forward. We have, after that, hired Tegra as our owner's representative. This is Dick Strasberg. He is our owner's representative. He has been invaluable to the city of Watertown in making sure that we are doing this right and moving this forward. He has incredible credentials. Among many other things, he was behind Target Field for the Minnesota Twins, which was voted the #1 baseball stadium or entire stadium in the entire nation. Yeah, so we are lucky to have him here in Watertown. We have a design concept team formed among citizens of Watertown, and work has continued in the past several months that has included facility tours, staff discussion, and community engagement. Next slide. Our immediate next steps. There are a lot of things that are going to have to happen to bring this project to fruition, but our immediate next steps are to continue our relationship with Tegra, Dick's contract is ending at this point, so we have an agenda item on Monday's City Council to continue this relationship with Tegra and to engage architect group 292 to bring forward a conceptual design that will include the price. This is our next step. We don't want to get ahead of ourselves and start discussing all sorts of variants that we will have to address sometime in the future, but all of those are just hypothetical until we know for certain what the price is going to come in at. And that's why we have to hire the architect. They will come back to us with a price and what we get for that price. At that point, we will know what we can and cannot do, and then we can start adding or subtracting to the facility. We can start amending it however we want, but that is our immediate next step. And then I would ask this for everyone, why is this good for Watertown? Obviously, the quality of life for the citizens, for the thousands of kids who will enjoy this facility, and adults too. It makes Watertown more attractive for recruitment of workforce and businesses. We have a lot of Minnesota people who are looking to move into South Dakota, not just Minnesotans, but also all over the country. And especially Minnesotans, they look for a place that has a nice ice arena. So this will help our businesses and workforce recruitment. It will bring in millions of dollars, tens of millions of dollars even, of spending for local businesses. The typical ice tourney in the winter brings in $126,000 just in one weekend. A summer tournament brings in $276,000 into the local economy. This is money that we are bringing in. Also, in the month of January, the Convention and Visitors Bureau speculated that just the first penny sales tax will increase by over $20,000 with a new ice arena in town. The third penny would do the same. The triple B tax would also go up. So this generates a lot of money for the city of Watertown. And also, where we have the site located, we believe that it is going to spur tens of millions of dollars in economic development. We had several meetings today with Watertown Development Company where we are continuing that. And then finally, don't ever lose the sight that we are finally going to be the people who come up with a solution for this long-standing problem that has faced the city of Watertown. With that, we have our owner's rep, Dick Strasberg, here. He can answer a lot of these questions better than I can, but we are open to hearing them. Thank you.
Any questions of either Mayor Holeen or Mr. Strasburg? Councilman Danforth?
Hi, Dick. Good to see you again.
How you doing?
Reed, when you said on your very first one that where it looks to be engaging 292 as the architectural firm, you've got twice listed on there, you got prices. This is just a clarity issue. You got Dick got us a great price, and then you've got something else. Are you referring, what are you referring to on that? Is
I'm sorry.
To the engineering costs, or is it, or I mean the
just on
costs?
yes, sorry. Thank you, Councilman Danforth. And Dick can answer this as well, but basically, this gentleman, because of the connections that he's had and the history that he has, a typical architectural conceptual design would cost maybe $25,000. He's getting it for us for about $15,000.
The action that we'll be asking council on Monday night is to approve the agreement with 292 not to exceed $15,500 for conceptual.
Sure. And just maybe a comment on 292. They're a group that we had two groups compete, JLG, and they're the group that did the wellness center, and they've also done a lot of hockey facilities. And the ICE committee is recommending to go with 292, and I definitely support that. They're a very strong group. They are the leader in this region for doing ice arenas, and they're the group also that gets hired when things don't go right. They're on several projects right now where there were mistakes made, and they hire them to do the studies to kind of clean them up. And they're a real strong group. I think the city will be happy with them.
Alderman Paulson?
I guess I'm going to start by saying, obviously I have a slight conflict of interest on this topic, so if you guys don't want me to talk about that, I guess I'll leave it into the council's hands. But
I think for tonight we'd be comfortable engaging or hearing your comments.
Okay. I just want to kind of reiterate, I've heard great things about 292. I've seen some of their work. being involved in the hockey community. Not really in the hockey community, I shouldn't say that, just as a fan more so, but 292 has done outstanding work, and I've heard really great things about them, and so I would like to see this move forward with them.
Alderman Bueller?
Thank you, Vice Mayor. I just wanted to also mention that Dick was instrumental in negotiating the percent of cost for this project as well. We might want to mention the fact that we did interview both architect firms along with their subs that they work with in Shakopee as well as in Fargo. So we did spend time with them at facilities that they had built. So we got an idea of what their work was like after it was completed, as well as what their firms could do for us.
Councilman Danforth?
So as we look to this project, in anticipation of it getting to the point of decision making and whether we build or not, the questions I have then is where are we at in that process? What's the kind of time frame that if we were to keep this going, that we would have drawings, concept, get a much closer analysis of what the cost is going to be, understand what the O&M budget is going to be, and that package to know what that. I know we don't know what that bottom line is ultimately till the bids are in, but we've got decisions obviously to make before then. But so where are we at, and what's the time frame for getting to where we understand approximately what this building is going to cost us, what's it going to cost us to run the facility, how are we going to finance it, or what our side of this is going to be from a budget standpoint? Where is that whole thing at?
So we just had the meeting with Amanda, and we were talking about this, and I've got some homework to do before we can finalize that. We had the meeting an hour ago. But I think in general, if we were looking at a targeted date, it might be the beginning of October. So that would be for getting the concept design and getting the concept designs priced up. And so that would be a targeted date. Now we've got to confirm that over the next few days. We're going to meet again I'll talk on Monday, and we'll get that firmed up. But that's a tentative schedule on it. And that will not be, that's not bids, that's construction estimates and, a project budget.
Excuse me, I always liken it to, with a project this large, it's a long string of dominoes of things that happen that have to fall. And someone has to tip over that first domino. This is what we're trying to do with the architect. To bring back and bring forward a cost. I do want to be honest with the public and the council that the cost has gone up from the original proposal, but that is totally out of our control because of the rising prices of commodities and steel and things like that due to the crazy world that we're living in due to COVID. But we know that we are going to come forward with the best proposal that we can for the city of Watertown, and take that into consideration.
And just one comment on that too is what we recommend on this is developing what I call the base model. If you buy a car, you can get a base model and get lots of extras on it. So what we want to do is establish what that base model is, and then work to create options that are enhancements. So that way we'll get a solid number up front and of what the minimum cost will be. And then you've got options to go from there.
Mayor Holeen, I've got a question for you. It might be helpful for the public that's tuning in, as well as some of us up here in the council dais. Who is working? Who is the committee that you're referring to? You've been the point person by and large. The public sees, but who else is working behind the scenes on this?
Well, thank you, Deputy Mayor. As you know, you are helping with this, and Councilman Bueller, the three of us were on the ice arena committee prior to the changeover of government. Former Councilman Roby is still very interested in staying part of this, as is former Councilman Lallam. But with that said, we have branched out and really engaged with the new form of government. City Manager Mack has been involved in all of our discussions now, and as have staff at a very intimate level, because we are at that point now where we need the staff of always there on a daily basis, because we are at the point now where the Ice Arena Committee had to come forward with the concept. And we did that, and we got that approved, and now we're at the point where we need to figure out the nuts and bolts and how to get this done. And that's where we need not only the political vision, which is coming from all of us now, which is why we're having this work session, but also from the staff to figure it out. So,
Thank you. I guess I'll just make a comment that I think there is some criticism being leveled at those of us on the council that were on this committee that we were not engaging the people that needed to be involved. And initially, it was. I mean, we were dealing, trying to pull the piece together to bring forth a concept. And from that point forward, though, we have engaged staff that you're referring to. I'm looking at, City Manager Mack, our finance officer, our city attorney, any number of people from our engineering department. We'll be pulling in Park and Rec people very soon here as we talk about the O&M side of it. So it's and as well as Watertown Development Company personnel have been very heavily involved in the conversations as part of this committee. So it's a pretty diverse group of people that we are now working with in trying to pull this together and bring it forward. And I got Councilman Tupper, you're
in that committee. Is there any community members involved in that?
There'll be an opportunity going forward for engagement with user groups and the community at large. The committee right now is really focused on just the general concept, and after we engage further with Dick, he'll help us have those conversations with the community so that we can really build a facility that not only meets the needs, but it's what they want.
I just think the sooner the better we can do that. That's going to, calm down the accusations per se.
Council Paulson.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. I have a few things, obviously staff being one of them. Previously, I'd heard from a few staff members that they were concerned that they weren't being talked to, and I know you said you were going to bring them into those discussions going forward, but I think that they would be a great resource because they're the ones constantly running it. That they know where the downfalls are currently, and to bring that in and have those issues resolved before we move forward is going to be a big talking point too. And then I know we did a former study before for user group costs, maintenance costs. Are we relying on that study going forward at all? Because I know that there was concerns from some of the user groups previously about how much per month they were going to have to increase their contribution towards the new ice arena. So I don't know if I guess that's one question. And then my second question, I'll just follow it up here and we can talk about it all. But as a general cost overall, I guess obviously putting an engineer's estimate is the number one step, but do we have a set number where we're aiming for? So it's not blown out of the water to start and then it's dead on arrival.
Mayor, do you want to?
I was going to say, I think we should answer your second question first, and then I can, if you want, talk a little bit about staff engagement.
And the second question, I'll just mention real quick. We have had studies done in the recent past, from McKinstry, among others, that has given us an estimation on O&M costs, and we've always understood that there are two costs to this: cost to build it and cost to run it. And we have never neglected either side of that. We've always been very cognizant and aware, and we've worked up plans about how to handle the ongoing O&M, because it can be very expensive to run ice. So we're trying to work up great plans. Dick?
Something that we often recommend on that, you've got your study that was done by a consulting group. We also recommend really looking hard at other facilities that are similar facilities and what they actually cost. So that way you've got, and the group that did that looked at some of those, but actually, sitting down and talking with them, visiting with them on how they run it, sort of lessons learned on what they've done, how they've done it. For example, when we were interviewing the architects, they brought us this one in Shakopee, and talking to the manager there, he had just a lot of experience in doing it. And so I think once we get to that point, then we sure want to see their actual numbers and see what it costs to run it, so that way you aren't surprised down the road.
And I'll use one of Dick's lines. Is he said the best thing that any city can do when they do a big project like this is go to other places and find out what they did wrong, and then you learn a lot on how to do it right.
Councilman Danforth?
Yeah, a couple of things. I'll ask them both, and then we'll go from there. But in regards to the selected location, I know there was testing that was going to be done. Where are we at in the whole decision point for the location to know if it's going to be where this will be located and move forward? Are there any issues that we need to be aware of? And then the second one is we have some rough numbers as to what we think this thing could cost, whether it's, we can pick a number, 15 million, 20 million, 25 million, whatever the numbers are. Do we know how we're going to fund this thing, how we're going to finance it? Do we have options? What are those options? How much? Because it's going to somewhat what Colin mentioned do we have a budget for this thing? And so that question to me comes down to what can we afford? And I had mentioned, I know, Amanda, when you and I spoke a couple weeks ago, probably the best thing that happened to us on our wellness center is it went to a vote of the people and they set the budget. That's the best thing that happened to us, because then we knew what we were working to. And so I'm wondering, where are we at with that whole process of what can we afford? And then where does that put us, and what potential plans might be coming back? So,
thank you, Councilman.
Mayor,
That enters into the speculative questions where we don't want to get lost in speculating when we don't know a number. This is why we're trying to figure it out from the architect, from the concept, because we don't know for certain what it's going to come in at and what we can maybe lower it down to or anything like that. But I know Councilman Bueller and I think Dick might have something to say about that as well. But we don't know for certain now, so I don't want the public to get lost, or any of us to get lost in a potential figure now when we don't know for certain what it's going to be when we actually hear from the architect. We will make that decision when we actually get some expert advice on that.
And I guess what I'd add to that is right now it's a very challenging time in terms of the cost estimating with what's happening with steel, PVC, other commodities. And just one big picture note on these ice arenas. A little bit different than the wellness center. We had a lot of options to consider there. For example, how large the gymnasium needed to be, or how large the pool would be, and we had, there's a lot of variables. Hockey, there's just plain not as many variables. If you're going to do a facility that's a long-term facility, the biggest thing on these ice arenas is how the humidity is handled and all the detailing and how that all works, so you don't run into problems down the road. And that kind of sets kind of a line in the sand. Then the variables get to be on things that are more like how large should the lobby be for tournaments, and there are some variables, but it's not nearly as widespread as it was on the wellness center.
Thank you, Mayor. Mike, maybe I can help with some of that too. As far as the O&M side goes, the McKinstry study, from what we found out with the couple facilities that we did visit, one in Fargo, one in Shakopee, they were all pretty close. They were in that annual O&M was about probably $550,000 to $600,000 range, somewhere in that neck of the woods. In regards to the overall cost of the project, we've had some of those folks tell us what it cost to build those 5-6 years ago. So you can kind of extrapolate what you think it's going to get to. We don't know, and we won't know until we put together some sort of a base plan, like we talked about, get the standard car, you get it without all the options. But I think the next step being the architect firm, and we know that we don't rely on an architect firm to give us a firm price, but we can get in the ballpark. And then after that, I think when we get the construction side of this engaged, we'll have like we did with the wellness center, Mike, we'll have a way better picture of what the overall cost would be. So.
And I guess I'd like to add too on the O&M side with that Bruce referenced, yes, 500,000 to 600,000, the figure that we heard. But let's say it was the Shakopee one that's actually turning a profit or operates in the black. Similar. I mean, those were the gross operating costs. But Shakopee was actually operating in the black. I mean, similar to our very fortunate with our wellness center. So again, those are gross costs before any kind of revenue is reflected.
I think if we use the model that you have from the wellness center, I think you're going to do well. Before COVID hit, I understood that was operating in the black. That's very unusual, but you did it right, and you sold the sponsorships and you looked for every opportunity that you could to, spread out the costs, and we need to do the same thing on this project as well. And these projects, I mean, it all comes down to how much time on the ice and how many groups you have that can get in, and what's the fair price to charge for the ice time. And I think that's, there's some strategies on that it will, I think, probably play out. One of them that we see is having more expensive ice time for the prime time. Right before school, it's a prime time. Right after school, it's a prime time. As a dad of a figure skater, I can tell you it's no fun getting up and getting your kid out of bed very early in the morning or staying late at night, but everybody wants the same time. So some strategies like that where you pay a little bit more for prime time and a little less for off-peak times and things like that. So we'll get into that. I mean, that's in the next, once we get a design so we know what we're dealing with, and knowing when we talk about it being multi-purpose, how multi-purpose is it? And what are some of those other revenue sources?
Council Paulson?
I'm going to continue to hit on this point pretty hard going forward even. But just throwing a number out there to the public when we don't know is going to scare a lot of people. And so if we get this and it comes back and it's $30 million and it's not functional as a multi-purpose or extremely functional as a multi-purpose, that I can guarantee our public is going to say no to that. I mean, it is. We need this arena. It's been talked about for way too long, and we're finally at a point where we're moving forward with it. But from what I'm hearing is, it started at a pretty low number, 12 million, and then we were hearing 15 million, and then now, obviously, that's going to increase because of product cost. But that's what I'm more scared of, is that we're going to get this estimate back and it's going to just absolutely blow everything out of the water, and we're not going to be able to sell it to the public.
Thank you. And that is a possibility. We don't know. I mean, if the sticker shock comes in way higher than what we can stomach, we might have to go to a plan B, plan C. I just say or at least me, I'll just speak for myself, want to be committed to finally solving this problem in Watertown in whatever capacity, however this looks going forward. Let's just be the people who finally solve this and get it done for Watertown. I will say with cost, one thing that Watertown has also learned is the costs only go up. And granted, we are in a weirder time because of COVID, but we also know that the costs are never going to be cheaper. It's the old adage of when is the best time to plant a tree, and that was 10 years ago. The next best time is today. And I think that's the same thing when it comes to a big budget item like ice, is we know the cost isn't going to be any cheaper 1 year down the line, 5 years down the line, but we do know that we can be the people who solve this issue.
Amanda?
I'd just like to provide a couple of comments. So how we intend to present this to council from a financial perspective is once we do have estimates, Kristen can run different financial models for different ways to pay for it. We also know that we are engaged in an MOU with the Watertown Development Company, and what that scenario would look like. Until we have a clear estimate, we can't provide a good recommendation to all of you on how to move forward. So it's a little bit chicken and an egg. Well, is it 20 million or is it 30? We don't know. And to Dick's point, they're going to provide us a base model and then options for enhancements if we decide that those are appropriate. And then we can model out the funding based on the consensus of the council. And then to speak to your earlier question about staff involvement, so when our committee met today, I'm now the point person for our owner's rep. We're going to meet once we get rolling, probably weekly, and we discussed, bringing the appropriate staff in as needed. So if we need to have a financial discussion, we'll bring Kristen in. If we've got legal questions, Matt comes in, engineering, et cetera, so that they're not all sitting in meetings every week that don't necessarily pertain to their area of expertise. But that is the plan going forward. Staff will be working the details of the project and bringing clear recommendations to the council when it's appropriate for you all to make decisions.
Councilman Danforth?
Yeah, I just want to clarify my point on the what we can afford. To me, what you can afford and what the estimate comes back in are two different things. We have a lot of things on our plate, and we're going to be talking about a lot of them tonight. And how those all fit together is ultimately what we've got to figure out. So other things, ICE may take a precedence over something else based on cost, or something else might take it'd be a higher priority. But ultimately, if we lay all of these things out that we have going on, and then even with rough numbers, we should have some idea what we can afford. And again, doesn't matter what that sounds dumb. We don't know what those estimates or those real costs are going to be, but that's right today, that's okay. And that's not what I was asking for. I'm wondering if when we lay out all these things, we've got this and we've got the park and we've just talked about that. When we lay all those things out, ultimately we should have an understanding of what we can afford. And that's what I'm asking. Have we done that? And to know approximately, independent of what the bids come in at, do we know approximately what we can afford for dollars? And that's where I'm asking. Really, do you see where I'm coming from, Kristen? I'm not looking for an estimate on what this thing's going to cost us. I want to know what we can afford. Second thing is I want to make sure we don't get lost on the issue of the site, of where we're at with the site, if you would, please.
Well, and I will let our finance officer answer something with that. Go ahead.
Thank you, Mayor. Councilman Danforth. So in terms of, if we look at what we have on the agenda for tonight, the terminal, that $5 million that is coming out of the capital improvement fund, that was in the budget, that was coming out of the reserves. So my comfort level with the terminal is that one's pretty much solid, locked in, part of the budget. The cash is there to pay for that one. In terms of the downtown park, that was initially budgeted for $2 million. That was also coming out of the capital improvement fund reserve cash fund. We do know that we did add $1 million to that project. Part of that was prefaced with, as we go into the 2022 budget, we kind of know we got that extra $1 million sitting out there. So there again, that will probably be a discussion for this council as we go into the 2022 budget to make sure that that's accounted for in our spending. So those are those two projects. The city hall and the street facility, a couple months back, they're kind of all blur, but a couple months back we did bring forward a resolution to go out for another $15 million of sales tax revenue bonds. So at this point, I have only reached out to take $7.5 million of that. That is to fund the $5 million estimate for the city hall purchase and remodel. And then 2.5 is to cover the 10th Avenue Street improvement project. So that's currently where we sit. So there's still $7.5 million on the table that hasn't, it's designated for the street facility, but at currently nothing is under contract for the street, and I have not taken that funding. I have not issued those bonds at this time. So then when the question's asked about what we can afford and how the ice arena, that's where not knowing the estimate, it is a difficult question to answer. We know that if you issue more debt, then what happens is your current spending each year goes down. That's kind of how that capital improvement fund works. I will say that there still is $5.8 million sitting in Fund 504. That is our. Thank you, Siri. Yeah, that's sitting in our capital projects fund right now. And that 5.8 has played into the conversations for the ice arena in terms of the lease with WDC. So that's kind of where all the dollars are sitting as we continue to move forward and we get a clearer picture of the ice and more discussion on the street facility. I think that's where that deeper. But as far as the terminal and the downtown project, those two to me are clearly able to be funded. They were set aside with the cash reserves. So,
I think in the interest of time, I would like to wrap up the discussion on the ice arena. Paulson, do you have one more comment or question?
Yes, and it'll be quick.
Okay.
I just want to ensure that this is going to be a multi-use facility, and I think that that's our biggest selling point too. That it's not just going to be hockey; it's going to be used as multiple sports at multiple times of the year, all year, because that's where we're going to make our money too, and we have to make sure that this is operating in the black as well. And obviously that goes without saying, but I just want to reiterate that should be one of our top priorities, is making that. So we're having tournaments and we're having those other uses in that facility.
I think the way the process typically works is we'll get the pricing on it and then price up some of these options. I'm going to just throw out one that may or may not be part of it, but if you have concerts in it, well, then you have to have show power. Then you have the HVAC changes so you can have it for increased crowds. So they all have a number on it, and early on it's difficult to make decisions on this because you got what I call a want list is probably a mile long. And then you got to balance it out with what it does to your other facilities so you aren't sort of pushing people away from another facility. But it becomes really crystal clear when we say it's going to cost you, $1.5 million to add this, and your revenue potential on it is X, or Y. So then it starts to becoming more of a numbers game. But the information you need to make the decision really is the raw data of roughly what it will cost to add for those things. For example, if you need to have the floor thicker, if you're going to use it for ag shows and you want to bring in tractors and combines, well, you got to have a thicker slab. Well, how much does it cost and what do you get for return on it? So I think those decisions will become a lot more black and white down the road.
I think I'm going to cut the conversation off tonight on this. Just a closing comment from my perspective. We've probably raised more questions than we've answered tonight, which is good. But I do want to make the point that the action that we'll be taking on Monday, a couple different agenda items, are some key steps in this process, because we'll be looking to engage Mr. Strasburg firm more fully, as well as entering the concept phase with our architect. And those are a couple of big steps in this process that hopefully, as we move forward from that, some of these questions will start to be answered and come together. Thank you.
Glenn, I have a comment to Colin's question. In regards to multi-purpose, that's something we're trying to engage the CVB group to give us some idea and some things that we may be able to use the facility for. And like Dick has alluded to, the costs that'll be associated with each one of those and how it's going to have to be engineered for those. We don't know what that could be. It might be none of the above. And one thing we're going to have to be real careful about is not cannibalizing the facilities that we've got in place right now. We got to be careful with that, with the event center and with the Goss and a lot of the other places in town that may be able to take advantage of a lot of those activities. So, I mean, it's feasible that there may be none. I mean, it might be just strictly an ice facility, and when you shut down for those other operations, you're losing ice time money as well. So,
I think my closing comment would be, there's a lot of things to be determined, but we are closer than we have probably ever been before in this community. And I just want to reiterate, I believe that the sentiment of the community is to just solve this issue so that we can move forward for the good of Watertown.
Mayor.
City Manager.
May I? Councilman Danforth had asked a couple of times about the soil. Can you speak to that, Dick? I just want to make sure that you get your question answered because I don't know the answer to it.
Yeah, the way I understand it is the site that you're looking at has, it's fill material. I looked at the soils report, and it's fill material. The fill material needs to be completely taken out and needs to be put back with engineered fill. And it's my understanding from the way the purchase, sort of pending purchase agreement would be placed for the WDC is the developer would deliver the site ready to go. And with that would have, there's a group that's AET, American Engineers and Testing. That's who the developer is hired, and that's the firm we'd recommend. So I think the city would be pretty well protected on that, on the soils issue. So I don't see an issue with the soils issue. It's an issue for the developer. It's expensive for him to compact the soil to the specification that we'll have. But after visiting with them, that's what they're expecting to do.
Yes, thank you very much. Thank you, Dick. With that, we'll move on to the Downtown Park or Foundation Plaza. Official name Foundation Plaza. Colloquialism is Downtown Park. So we will have two people present on this. Our Assistant City Engineer, Justin Peterson, and our Parks and Rec Director, Terry Kelly. Take it away, Justin.
Yeah, my name is Justin Peterson, Assistant City Engineer. The Watertown Foundation Plaza is downtown park. It's between two developments. On the west side here is called Parkside Place, and on the east side there's a future development called the Ruins. It's roughly about the location of the existing senior center is right about here. Over the last several months, we've engaged with Confluence and city stakeholders, including Watertown Foundation, WDC, to come up with a series of amenities. Some of them are the stage, which is right here, the grass area. In the middle here, there's a water feature, a playground equipment, some other miscellaneous spaces for flexible event spaces. And then it's also a four-season park. There's an area here for outdoor rink. This is kind of a rendition that Confluence put together for the snow, the winter season. And then the capacity of the park is roughly 1,200 people. The stakeholder group is scheduled to meet next week to discuss some of the final items, and we'll bring a series of proposals, I guess. One proposal, agreement, I should say, that's coming to the council would be utilizing some space here for outdoor, for the ice rink, warming area, and bathrooms and other public spaces. And then expected bid is roughly about Thanksgiving, and the estimated cost is about $3 million. If there's, I'll ask Terry Kelly if he's got anything to add.
Okay, thank you, Justin. On my report, just want to kind of touch on the operational aspect of the project. In addition to what we see as future maintenance, on the operational side, we are definitely have the O&M budget on the forefront of thought. But what I've really been focused on is the staffing based on a full-time level. On an already kind of stretched thin park staff, I've kind of penciled out that we're looking at about 1,000 to 1,200 hours of man time. What that would be to maintain the park. If we do get ice, that number changes a little bit. But that's not really a direct expense, as we already have those on salary. What we'll do following that is kind of piece in the operational side. That could be extra seasonal, part-time maintenance staff, or program staff. We're really preliminary, so we don't know what that program aspect's going to look like yet. We're going to partner definitely with the CVB, the Chamber of Commerce, a lot of different groups. So we haven't put the program piece together. Example, Thursday Night Live, farmers markets, winter wonderlands, just a bunch of different special events. So it's been difficult to put a true O&M budget together. As far as the second part of the operational, really the utilities, really needs to wait almost till our final design. And I see, John and Lyle with Confluence are on with us, but I've been working with them as far as the recreational aspect. It's hard to put a number on, say, the ice. We don't know exactly, what size of that sheet of ice. We won't know how to budget for the chiller, the electrical side of that, the water. Same thing with the splash part or pad, not knowing what amenities we have, because that would affect flow rates on a pass-through system. So those numbers really are hard to gauge right now without a final concept. What I have done is I reached out to communities that do have splash pads, outdoor ice. We're seeing a lot of synthetic ice, so I haven't been able to get a real firm number, but I just wanted the council to be aware that, our staff, both the recreation and parks, working hard to get a number put together. Very preliminary now, so I really can't put a firm grasp on what that number is going to look like. But as we move forward and work with Confluence and the stakeholders to find out what the end product's going to look like, I'll be able to bring the council a really firm number before we get to the process of even probably close to bidding. So, I will also see if John or Lyle with Confluence has anything to add, and Justin, myself, can definitely be open to questions. So thank you, Mayor and Council, for listening.
John, would you like to say anything? Are you on the line, John Jacobson from Confluence?
Yes, I'm here. Hi, everybody. I don't have anything to add per se. I think I'd be more than happy to answer questions if there's anything on the mayor or the council's mind, and that may spur some additional discussion.
Thank you very much. I know none of you are necessarily the advocates who brought this forward, but I'm asking this with everyone else to kick off the questions. But how may this help the city of Watertown?
Sure. So I think Mayor, it's a couple things from our perspective. One, this overall was brought forward as part of the H2O visioning plan that was done, I believe, back in 2014. It was one of the byproducts of that, one of the goals for the downtown development. So overall, I can tell you that the public spaces such that are proposed, like Foundation Plaza, have kind of 4 primary benefits. They deal with social benefits, economic benefits, health ones, and then environmental. So from some of our work examples, like on the downtown Sioux Falls River Greenway, currently we're working on a $14 million phase 3 project of that. That's going to result in over $200 million of private redevelopment along the reach of that. And in the first 2 phases, it was about $9 million worth of improvements that resulted in over $135 million of private redevelopment. So typically the American Planning Association would say that a quality public space like this would result in a 30% increase in property values adjacent to parks and public spaces. So, from an economic point of view, typically these spaces foster increased property values, increased tax revenues, and just like the discussion about the ice rink, increased tourism revenue. Downtown Watertown is a destination place, both for the community and for the visitors to Watertown. And I think you can look at places like Rapid City in their downtown plaza and what that has done to help revitalize their downtown and continue its energy and growth, or even the new downtown Aberdeen Plaza that we just finished here this summer. That was part of a number of adjacent redevelopment projects. So, there's a wide, long list of improvements and benefits that these types of spaces bring.
Thank you very much. Any questions from the council? Councilman Paulson.
Thank you, Mayor. This is kind of for all of them now because I heard him mention staffing. It sounds like we're going to have a lot of requests for staffing going forward. I mean, Todd mentioned it with the airport. Obviously, the ice arena, we're going to need more staffing for that. Now, the downtown park, and I'm sure it's just going to keep going. I guess this is maybe directed towards Kristen, too, is are we prepared for that?
I don't know that we're ever prepared because staffing is just challenging across the board. One thing that we have talked about internally is looking at right-sizing the departments, so making sure that we're not overstaffed in some areas. And if we are, how can we shift to some of the understaffed areas? I think that this particular conversation needs to be a part of our strategic planning because you don't typically put staff or FTEs into a capital improvement plan, but they need to be part of the consideration. So to your point, there are going to be a lot of requests. I'm still relatively new, but I feel like there are a lot of staffing requests every year, and that's not unique to Watertown. And so what we intend to do with the budget process is really bring recommendations to you that internally we've had discussions about and we all feel comfortable with, okay, well, this year we think it's appropriate to add staff here. I may want staff, but I understand that it needs to go here this time around. And we would not, I don't want to speak out of turn, but we would not bring a recommendation to you that would put us in the hole based on adding new staff to our ranks. Did I butcher that? Okay.
And I would even say the question specifically was, are we prepared for that? That's part of why we're having this meeting tonight and meetings like this is so that we can have this discussion. Councilman Danforth raised that really good point, which I know is on all of our minds, is we've got to be able to afford not only the construction of these projects, but the ongoing cost of maintaining them and operating them. And that's why we are having this tonight, because it can be daunting, but it has to start somewhere, and this conversation tonight is really meant to start preparing us for that. Any further questions? Councilman Bueller.
Yeah, I don't know if this is the right forum. Thank you, Mayor, by the way. But I just looking at this design, and I think this has probably been vetted fairly well. But I have a question in regards to vendors, where you would position vendors on this layout. And I'm sure I see a couple of shade structures I see 3 of them that might be for that. But maybe you can help me with that question, where we would put several vendor locations where they have shade and power hookups, that kind of thing.
Bruce, I can assist in answering that. So there's a number of flexible use spaces that are associated with the plaza development. So as an example, the area up to the south side of County Fair, adjacent to Parkside Place, so where that screen area is at. So that was designed or is designed to be able to, if we want to pull food trucks up there, to the back drop-off area along the alley, we can do that. We can set vendor tents up on the south side of that. And possibly even if the city and stakeholders feel that it's important to potentially even bring food trucks in there, that entrance off the alley could certainly accommodate that. I do know that as part of the Parkside Place development, there is a food service area as part of that building that's designed to access the plaza. And then, of course, the main primary event lawn, depending upon the function that is set up, could be used to house tents as well. So if you were doing a small pedestrian-oriented farmers market, you could use that space and still maintain all the open walkways. And of course, the stage area itself could be used to set up vendors depending upon the particular event that is being used. So really, we tried to develop the space to be as flexible and multi-used as we can. And then, depending upon, a larger use, if there was a big event going on, the alley behind there could be shut down for the vehicles for special events, open to just pedestrians, and those kind of various loading and unloading areas that we have indicated along the north side can all be set up for vendors as well.
Now, I have one other question, if I might, in regards to shade. Is there an intention for any kind of it? I don't know how you'd do it. I've been looking at this thing, and I don't know how you'd set up shade structure for the lawn area. But that always seems to be an issue. If you go to our events that we currently hold downtown on Thursday nights, everybody migrates to the place where there's shade. I know we do.
Sure, you bet. And that's a really good question, Bruce. And so I think that comes down to a couple things. One, the trees that we have that would be planted within the plaza space itself obviously need to mature to help provide some of that shade. It would be our goal to, in strategic areas, to plant larger trees than in others. But also, if you look at like the water feature area, there you'll see kind of 3 turquoise squares. Those are intended to be shade associated with the play area and the water feature area. That said, it would not be unfeasible to set up temporary tents to provide shade in the main event lawn if there were, a smaller event going on that, be it music or otherwise, that wasn't necessarily super important for sightline point of view. And then obviously we would rely to a certain level in late day sun for the new Parkside place and existing buildings like the community foundation to provide some shade as well. But there's no question about it right now. The way the space is programmed, if it's the middle of the day, you're going to be looking for shade under the primary stage or under the trees and those types of spaces. So we could incorporate trees in the primary event lawn, but right now we're not doing that just because we're really looking at a synthetic turf lawn in that kind of main rectangle there, just to help accommodate the ice better and Perry's operation and maintenance of the park. That turf area will get a lot of use and will experience a lot of compaction. So in theory, based on that use, there would be times that lawn would have to be kind of shut down for a few periods a year to reinvigorate the turf. And so that's why one of the things we're looking at is putting synthetic turf in there, which helps with that option. But it can be difficult to grow trees in that area when we're using that kind of medium. So it's kind of a give and take kind of situation there.
So just throwing this out because I've had experience with worked on the softball field complex, and that was one of the things that we really pushed for was shade. And I know there are some shade structures that we've got in place at our complexes right now. And I know you can get those, and I know Director Kelly's probably not going to like this because they got to put those up and take them down every year. But we may want to consider that for this area to put some of those temporary shade structures up, where they do anchor the poles in the ground and then they set the canvases on top. I think unless it's a view obstruction, which I don't think it would be, if you look at one of our softball complexes here that we've got a kind of a general area where people can congregate that has a fairly large structure that we use there. So that's something I think because I don't think we can rely on some trees, that are a distance off for how many years that you're going to bake in the sun out there. So I think that's something we really need to consider on this facility moving forward.
I will interrupt at this moment. I don't want to get lost in everyone offering ideas for tweaks for this park, because I know that we've gone through this. I know with Councilman Bueller, you can't take the Parks and Recreation out of him. I know that. But go ahead. But I know I allowed the questions because I wanted to I wanted the council to know some of the questions that I want you to be thinking of, because we will have another crack at this. It's kind of like with the ice arena and a lot of these projects. When the number actually comes in, when we have a chance to look at it, we can then have the discussion, what, if anything, do we want to take out or put in? And that's why I encourage the council to be thinking of their ideas as to what they want to see or not see at this location.
Yes, Mayor, thanks. I would add to that, just like Dick was mentioning in your prior ice venue, that, construction prices are volatile right now. So we want to make sure that we get as close to a $3 million budgeted project as we can. So based on that, we will have a number of alternates designed into the project to help facilitate that flexibility, which you were just speaking to.
Thank you. Any further questions from the council on the general idea? Councilman Paulson?
Thank you, Mayor. I'm just going to come out and say that I think obviously there's an elephant in the room surrounding this. There's been many articles written about it in the newspaper. There's a lot of comments. There's an active campaign out there that's trying to get the word out. So obviously, people are talking about this more so than the ice arena, more so than most of the other facilities in town. And I guess my point is, I've been to a few communities lately that you've seen this type of park, not exactly this, but a community space that people kind of rally around. And you see the parks are filled, and that's, I guess, what we're going for here. And there's a lot of businesses that came down here for this space because this was talked about, and there's also two housing developments put here around this space. So I guess I'm trying to address that elephant in the room a little bit from my standpoint, but I'm just kind of reiterating that I think that this is an important aspect going forward.
Thank you. Any further questions from the council? Seeing none, we will move on to the conversation about the City Hall purchase and renovation. And for that, we will go to one of our city engineers, Marcy Luno.
Thank you, Mayor Holeen. Just give me a second. I'm going to bring up my paper. Kristen, can you pass that out for me? Okay, so Kristen is passing out a proposed, she's handing down a proposed budget that TSP has prepared for us. Thank you, Mitch, for zooming in on that. Tonight we're going to talk about the City Hall renovation project and our current status, as well as what we foresee going forward for a timeline. We do have TSP representatives on the line, so if we do have specific questions, they can maybe help me with it. I apologize, I don't have any fancy renderings. I didn't know that was criteria, so I apologize for that. I do have plans if we do want to see them. But so where we're currently at, we have purchased the Wells Fargo building right next to us, and you can see the amount of purchase in the budget. We have started the design process with TSP as our architect and engineering firm. They have been through committee meetings with us, with staff, to see where our needs are. And Mayor Helene has been asking everyone what this benefits the community of Watertown. And I would say that was probably a major decision from the committee, is what our, I'm not going to say our downfalls, but our our issues are with our current building and how we feel we could better serve is maybe why they have gone forward with us, not having been on the committee during those decisions. But I would say they looked at our accessibility for this building as well as our connectivity. So if you came into this building, it's a little bit hard to maybe find the person you're looking for or where you're going. So they are looking at renovating the building so you have public spaces and staff spaces, but also a council chambers that serves the community well. It can develop into training rooms or a council chambers that can have larger meetings with overflow space. Also, you know, we've looked at developing for our growth. I know a part of this building doesn't necessarily allow for the quick changes. Maybe even the form of government that we have today has caused little changes throughout, and it's sometimes hard with cinder block walls. So, but where we are is we do have the design with the public spaces and the staff spaces kind of pretty well set. So timeline for the budget that's in front of you is actually looking to go out to bid late fall or late spring, early fall. And then if we get approval of the bid, we'd probably look at construction happening late winter to 2022, somewhere in there. And then we do have intentions to bring this to council for approval to go to bid first. So you'll see that coming sometime this late fall. Mayor Holeen, I'll hand it back.
Thank you very much,
Questions?
Marcy. And you've already answered the question that I always kick off with. The other thing I said, you touched upon something that I think I would like to remind all the council members of this is we as the elected leaders always, but especially under the new form of government, are tasked as the visionaries for the city of Watertown. What do we want? And part of that is with the city hall or with all of these topics tonight, it's what is the city we want to become, not the city that we are now. And that's our job, is to create that vision. So with that said, any council questions? Councilman Danforth.
Could you go back over you confused me on the timeframes. So you mentioned something about going out to bid in spring or fall. Or you mean like this last spring? I'm assuming we're looking to go out to spring to bid this coming fall, correct? That be correct?
Thank you for that question, Councilman Danforth. Yes, I do need to clarify that. We'd be looking to go out to bid late summer. Yes, thank you. Late summer this year, early fall. Construction would probably be between late winter and early spring.
And when would the anticipated completion be?
Actually, I would have to defer to TSP and how they've seen these projects go. Just based on our other construction, I would guess completion would be other city construction buildings. I would aim for late fall of 2022.
Thank you. Any further questions? Councilman Danforth.
The other one I was wondering about is if we have, what has been our thoughts in regards to this facility and what's going to happen to it and what is that cost going to be? I think we got three options, right? We sell it, we use it, or we tear it down. And most likely, we're going to tear it down, make a parking lot out of it, I would guess. But whatever it ends up being, where are we at with deciding what happens to this facility? And if there is a cost associated to that, where is that coming from?
Thank you, Councilman Danforth. So I would address that as we don't have a plan at this time because that's not necessarily something that's been discussed with me throughout the committee meetings. Maybe it was discussed before, but I haven't followed up on it. You are correct. There really is those three options. And as we move forward, we would be discussing that from a community standpoint. I know with the downtown park coming, people probably will be looking for more parking, different things to take into consideration with that, and we'll be probably discussing that in general in the future as a group.
Our city manager, Amanda Mack, would like to speak to that as well.
I don't know if I'll speak to it well, but I will try. I think part of the plan is once we have a clear timeline on when we're bidding this project and when we anticipate being able to move in, because then we can have more in-depth discussions about this facility, because moving is one of the challenges. There's a lot of stuff in the basement. There's a lot of files, and so if we sell it to someone, do we have to be out, the day we sell it? So just kind of working through some of those options will come after we have a clear timeline on construction and completion.
Councilman Paulson.
Thank you, Mayor. I guess I hit on staffing issues previously, but I guess that's going to go into you hit on growth a little bit, Marcy. Is there room for growth outside of what we already have in the plans?
Thank you, Councilman Paulson. There is some areas allocated for future growth. I couldn't tell you the percentage that it is. We already have spaces allocated, office areas that are currently going to be empty to allow for some growth.
Councilman Vilhauer would like to speak to
I
that.
would just make the comment, I don't want to speak for Councilman Bueller here, but as sitting on that committee, we've questioned a number of times throughout the process that, do we really need all this space? So the short answer to your question, Councilman Paulson, is yes, there is room for growth.
Thank you. Councilman Danforth?
Yeah, I'm not going to promise this, but I think it's my last question. It might be. Are we really only anticipating $20,000 worth of FF&E on this project?
Yeah. 265 is on the bottom of it. So thank you for that question. It's on the bottom. It's under fixtures, furnishing, and equipment.
I was looking up at the
construction.
Okay, that's
yep.
design and
So we have 265 allocated at this time, and actually, I would say we are meeting with the. She's not the architect, but she's doing the furniture, interior designer. Thank you. We are meeting with her next week when Heath is back to go over that. I actually worked on the wastewater facility project, and I saw what their furnishing and finishing came in at, and I've actually addressed that with TSP already. That I'm not sure about that that line item, but we're gonna look into it further.
Thank you. Any further questions? Seeing none, thank you very much. We'll move on to discussion on the street facility, and for that we have our street superintendent, Rob Bainan, on the line.
Thank you, Mayor. Can you all hear me?
Yes, you're coming through loud and clear.
Okay, thank you. I think Sue was over a bit ago and dropped off a brief summary for you guys. It should be sitting in front of you. I'm just going to go over a few things about this, about our current facility and our proposed street facility. A few highlights in that. So, and also at the end, I'm going to give you a little timeline that I worked on, and hopefully that'll give you an idea what we're looking to push for to get this project moving. Our current facility right over here, a few of you guys have been here, a few of you people have, but it was built in 1956 on 5 acres of land, and of that, 3.8 is in the floodplain, and 1.4 of that is in the floodway. So that part is, we can't build on that part or do anything with that. So this site currently has 6 permanent buildings, which include 3 that are heated for, and that equals 12,900 square feet. 2 of the 3 buildings are not insulated that we heat. That's the way they did it back then, I guess. But and then we also have 3 cold storage buildings, equals 12,500 square feet, which also includes our sand and salt dome. That's 6,300 square feet. So that's a grand total of 25,400 square feet. In November of 2015, we had the current facility appraised, and it appraised at about $540K. So in 2016, I requested dollars to be placed in a long-range budget to replace the current facility, and council did approve it. And we penciled it in to break ground in 2021. So our current facility doesn't have much room to stockpile materials, as you can see when you drive by. We do have some material stockpiled here, but we also have other locations throughout town that we keep material. We just don't have one place to keep it. We do struggle with that part. We don't have a truck scale at this time, so a lot of times we have to estimate materials coming in and going out. When it has to be more accurate, we weigh our trucks either out at Dunix or the landfill, and that's costly just in the time it takes to run out to those places to weigh materials. So due to the lack of indoor space for our machinery, we're forced to store machines in off-site storage. Todd at the airport is gracious enough to let us use the old stone hangar to store machines in the off season, so that helps a lot. Let's see. In the wintertime, we definitely have issues with starting machines and blowing hoses not functioning right because they're stored on the outside or in cold storage or outside where we plug them all in, but that doesn't always help as far as starting machines. We definitely have issues with getting them running sometimes. The other thing with hydraulic fluid, when it's cold, it does not function well in the machine, and you're running anywhere from 35 to 60 gallons of hydraulic fluid, and it takes 1 to 2 hours to warm that up to where the machine functions properly and doesn't have extreme pressures, blowing hoses, that type of thing. So we do have a lot of issues with that in the wintertime. It's probably the number one issue we have is getting machines running that are just too cold and blowing hoses. So on the new facility information, Heath and I have been working on this project together for the last 2 years. We established very preliminary estimates based on similar regional facilities. Our most recent budget request was $6 million. Based on this, we figure hopefully that's going to cover with COVID. It's a little bit of a gray area because prices have increased. So, with the council approving the $15 million bond, which $7.5 million of it was earmarked for the street facility, that definitely would help get us where we need to be. But we still have a lot of legwork to do to get to a point where we're to know exactly what it's going to take to build this. So we currently have several sites in mind, and we are working on narrowing that down based on the cost of the land, current infrastructure and location. Definitely helps if we have current infrastructure such as sewer and water nearby, because it can be quite spendy to run that, as you all know. And we're looking at 10 to 15 acres would be ideal for us. 15 acres would really be good because it allow room for growth and stockpiling area, which is really needed. The 5 acres we have here, which it's just not even close to enough. So we've looked at these other facilities, and based on what we currently have and what we're looking at for growth, 40,000 square feet would really be nice, but I don't know if we'll get there or not. The cost, like I said, it's going to determine that. So a 10,000 square foot chemical, sand, salt storage shed, which generally that can be a hoop shed. They're pretty reasonably priced. Like I said, currently I think ours is 6,400 square feet, and there's times when it's plumb full and we just have no more room to put material. So 10,000 square foot would really help. Permanent mounted truck scale is needed as well at a new facility, which would really help as far as weighing materials coming in and out. No guesstimates, no running out to the landfill to weigh trucks or Dunix to weigh trucks. New facility, of course, you're going to have stormwater detention, fence, sanitary sewer, water, natural gas, electricity, fiber optic lines, and of course, you're going to have miscellaneous tools and office furniture to finish this up. Now, if you look on the last sheet of that summary, you'll see some numbers which talk about some of the breakdown of the cost of land. You know, the main building, we're looking at allocating $4 million for that. Fence, we figure $100,000 will cover that to fence in the facility. Overhead train trolley system, $80,000. Truck scale, $125,000. The sanitary sewer hookups, it's really gonna, and stormwater and water, electric, gas, all that is gonna really depend on where we go. That part's really up in the air. Sand salt chemical building, a hoop building I was talking about, $125,000 should cover that. Of course, hard surfacing throughout the facility outside the building, $300,000 is what we've allocated for that. Wash bay, that's one thing we currently don't have, is a wash bay. In the summer, we're able to wash our equipment outside here, and that's fine and dandy, but in the winter, when we're trying to clean salt off the machines, it's a struggle. We drive out to Cenex with our equipment and run through their truck wash bay, or sometimes we hire Titan out here to wash our equipment in their big truck bay. That will be nice, having a truck wash. It's very important. And the equipment we get, you know, our equipment's expensive, and to keep it clean is important. Keep it from rusting, that type of thing. Especially the rust, the salt and the calcium chloride and stuff that we use, it's highly corrosive. So we try to get it off as soon as we can. But as far as the timeline, you'll see below a timeline for, it states basically we talk about prep for RFPs, you know, and it shows like we're an anticipated deadline for these things, August 13th. RFP submitted back to us September 10th. Review and site completion September 27th. Council approval of RFPs October 4th. Establish preliminary architectural estimate probable costs October 22nd. Then preliminary and final designs in between that 4 months in there up to February 22. Construction documents and bidding March 25th. Acceptance of bids and notice to proceed April 19th, and then break ground in June of 22. Now I know that's aggressive. What is that, about 11 months out or so? But with any luck, we can move forward and get this thing done. So, oh, I do have another thing here too. I anticipate a question coming up, how this facility is going to make our streets better. One thing that in the wintertime, by having machines in a heated space is I just can't express how important that is. In the wintertime especially, but to clear snow faster, get to it faster, less downtime, speed and efficiency will be increased in the wintertime by having a facility where we can keep our snow equipment in a heated area. And really, you know, starting equipment in a heated area is so much easier. You don't have to plug them in. They start up. All the hydraulic fluid is warm. All the functions of the loader arms and the blade arms and stuff all function properly. They're not slow. That's a big deal. And it does generally take 1 to 2 hours to get these machines warmed up enough to where everything flows smoothly and functions correctly. Like I said earlier, you generally have 35 to 60 gallons of hydraulic fluid in each machine. So you have to warm that up when you're outside plugged in or in the cold building or cold shed. It just takes a lot longer. We tend to break a lot of hoses because of cold hydraulic fluid, and that's a lot of downtime repairing those. Let's see. We're able to start plowing sooner. When we start machines that are in our shop at 60 degrees or so, 60, 65, depending on if we know we're going to be plowing, we turn it up, get it a little bit warmer in there so our machines are warm, but you can start them up and a minute later you can be out the door. When we're outside with our machines or in the cold storage building, you have to let them run for 20 minutes before you move them if you don't want to have any issues. And that depends on the temperature, but generally we let them run for 20 minutes so we get everything warmed up enough to move them. The built-up slush on machines. Now, at the end of the day of plowing, all these machines have slush or snow dust that's accumulated on them. And a lot of these machines don't get thawed out overnight, and we put them right in a cold storage shed, and that ice or slush, in some cases, turns to complete ice the next day. And we've had problems with pieces, mainly hoses, that have broke because of a chunk of ice that has pulled on a hose and broken the coupling. So those are some things, mainly wintertime things that would help make our streets better. I guess it's not really making our streets better, but we're plowing the streets faster, which makes them safer faster. So, any questions?
Superintendent Bainan, you kind of stole part of my question, but I will ask the question that I know we will field from the public. How may this help the potholes in Watertown in the summer? I mean, you spoke to winter, but what about spring and summer?
Right. Stockpiling materials on site. One thing that we do have right now, if you've noticed a big chip pile outside here, these are chips that we've swept up after chip seals and we've stockpiled them. Last fall, we purchased a spray patcher from Brookings, a used machine, and we're currently this week, early this week was the first time, or last week, that we used it. And that's the material we're going to be running through that. But really in the summertime, stockpiling material for fixing the roads, anything direct, how it's going to help improve potholes, I don't have anything for you off the top of my head right now. It's, keeping equipment indoors is a big deal. As far as, like I was saying earlier today, that, our latest motor grader cost was almost $330,000. And to have that type of machinery sitting outside, summer or winter, you're looking at rot of tires, rot of hoses, fading, that kind of stuff isn't as critical as in the wintertime, keeping the slush and snow melted off. So, any other questions on that?
Yes, Councilman Tupper.
Rob, do you have any idea what your maintenance cost? This is probably a tough question, but what that extra maintenance cost is by leaving all that equipment outside? I know it varies from year to year, but
that is a good question. I'd be pretty hard pressed to come up with a number for you on that. I do know in the wintertime, if I look back at our bills from the places that we get hoses from, I think we spend a lot of money on that. It just seems like all winter long, those invoices are coming in for equipment that's broken hoses, And a lot of these pieces of equipment, the hoses are pretty new on it, but a lot of times they're broke from built up ice chunks that break loose as we're working and then take a hose with them. And that downtime is really critical because our team is small. We only have 12 full-time street maintenance workers that plow for the city, and it's really important to keep them moving. Every time we're down fixing equipment, that slows us down. We might not get to your road as soon.
we'll just put a fictitious number out there. Say it's $100,000 a year that you might save. That's $100,000 a year you can spend on potholes.
Yeah, definitely. There definitely would be a savings by having that, having machinery in as far as maintenance goes. And our current facility is not efficient. 2 buildings that we heat, that we have to heat, they're brick buildings. They were built in the 50s and they're not insulated. So, our utility bills, I'm sure Kristen probably have a pretty good handle on that too, but I'm sure our utility bills for gas is probably higher than most facilities that the city has.
Thank you. Councilman Bueller has a question for you, Superintendent.
Thank you, Mayor. Rob, not to get into details, I have to be careful what I ask now. Do we have, and the reason I'm asking this, I think it's important, an exhaust mitigation system, is that in the plan? Like we have at the fire department, at those buildings?
Say that again, you cut out
An
there.
exhaust mitigation system, do we have that in the plan? For those vehicles to start up?
Not that far down the road, but we will have, due to the fact that we will be running equipment indoors, we're going to have some type of ventilation system. Also, working on equipment and having to fire them up rather than just pulling them out of the shop. There's a lot of times we have to fire them up to do repairs and whatnot. So there will have to be, I'm sure, an exhaust ventilation system for our facility. Matter of fact, I'm pretty certain that's required in building codes nowadays too.
Thank you. Councilman Vilhauer has a question.
Well, not a question, but a comment for you, Rob. I've been out to your facilities several times over the course of my time in the council, and I just cringe when I see the expensive piece of equipment that we've got sitting around out there. I know $7.5 million, that's a lot of money, but I got to commend you and your staff for making do with what you've got out there and the dollars that you are entrusted with that are sitting out in the elements.
Thank you. I appreciate that. We do try very hard. The staff in the wintertime especially, you guys would laugh if you came over to the shop before a winter storm's coming in, because we have all the loader buckets off of our loaders, and you cannot walk between them in our main shop. You have to weave your way through because we have loader booms touching each other with no buckets on them to get everything in we possibly can. And the guys have they've maneuvered a lot of things around trying to find a better way to fit them in. It's like a puzzle. Tetris. You guys remember the game Tetris?
Thank you, Rob. I've always been a Super Mario man myself. Any questions from the council? Any further questions? Thank you very much, Superintendent Bainan. With that, we will close the discussion of those capital improvement projects and move on to discussion of council and staff retreat. For that, we will go to our city manager.
Thank you, Mayor. This should be a relatively short discussion. When I met with all of you prior to you taking office, we talked a little bit about scheduling a council staff retreat where we could talk through things like communication and how do we communicate with one another and committees and boards and commissions, those types of things. So I'd like to get a half-day work session on the calendar. With that, I did have an opportunity to speak with Jeff Weldon. Some of you know Jeff. He's retired city manager from the city of Brookings. And he has graciously volunteered to come and help facilitate part of the discussion at that work session, session around council staff communications, because this is a new form of government and we want to, we don't want to impede how we're communicating with one another, but we want to make sure we're doing it the right way, and is willing to kind of share how things flowed in Brookings. If you are open to that, he wanted to make sure that I asked before I just scheduled him. But he has availability the week of August 9th. And so I'd like you to look at your calendars. I'd like to do a half day, either starting at noon or starting at 8 and going until noon. And we'll have Jeff come and visit with us a little bit. And then I have some other things that we need to really talk about, like I said, committees, boards and commissions, these work sessions. How do you like them? How do you want them to work? But also, I think it's going to be very important if we come out of that with some clear 90-day goals, specifically around the transition to the new form of government, and what's that look like, and what can the public expect now that we're all in place and we've had a little bit of time to get our feet under us. I feel like the fire department just backed a hose into my office and it's just coming at me. So I'm sure the rest of you feel the same way. So if you could look at your calendars for the week of August 9th, I'm completely open. So whatever works for you works for me. And and I'll get a hold of Jeff if everybody is agreeable to that. And I'd like to have department heads and our division managers and supervisors there as well. So.
Kind of funny, everyone is looking down at their phones, checking their schedule. Yeah. Councilman Vilhauer.
Just a comment. I'm not typically a big fan of retreats, but I think this is one where it definitely would be worth the time well spent. And I would second the idea of having Mr. Weldon. I've gotten to know him over the course of the last 3 years as we were contemplating, or the Home Rule Charter Review Committee was contemplating revisions or changes to how we operate. And so I reached out and have communicated with him quite often over the course of the last several years. So I would definitely endorse him as a recommendation for leading or at least facilitating part of the retreat.
Thank you. Other Councilman Schutte.
Yes, I see this as a wonderful way to build community within the team here. One concern was yesterday at training in Pier with the Assistant Attorney General had mentioned the challenges of the appearance of a quorum and being together. So just curious what your thoughts are on that.
Well, we would publicize it as a public meeting. I'm not sure which facility we would hold it in, here or at another boardroom in town. I'm not requesting that we go someplace fun. And it's open to the public. I mean, they're welcome to attend if they like, and the press. It's just a more informal setting rather than an agendized, here's where we're taking action. So, yeah, we would make sure that we meet those requirements. I don't know.
And I also believe that the intent is, if one of the people on the council has an idea of something that is important that needs to be discussed, this is an opportunity as well if you want to bring it forward, if it doesn't quite fit in a regular agenda or something like that.
Right.
Councilman Paulson.
I was going to say, I also have homework for all of you in preparation for that. And maybe Matt can speak a little more to this. I'm going to put him on the spot. So the City of Brookings has what they call their governance and ends policies. And it's a document that they created as they were transitioning into the city manager form of government 20 years ago when they went through that. And I think it's a great starting place for some of our discussions. It doesn't mean we have to adopt it just like it is. It doesn't mean we have to take any part of it, but it'll at least help us frame the discussion for the things that we really do need to be on the same page of how we operate as an organization. And I like to learn from others, and why reinvent the wheel if you don't need to. So I just ask that you take a look at it. If there are specific parts of it that you think we definitely should pull out and have a more in-depth discussion about, please let me know, and we'll make sure that that's included in the agenda and make sure Jeff is prepped to discuss that. So it won't take you long to read it. It didn't take me long. So,
Councilman Paulson, you had a question or a comment?
Yes, thank you. I guess my question is, what staff would be there?
So department heads, division managers and supervisors.
Okay.
So frontline staff, it's probably not appropriate at this point for them to be part of it, but decision makers within the organization.
Okay. Yeah, I think team building is big, and I think we have to hit on the morale and team building throughout the whole city, so I think that would be a great opportunity.
Thank you. Any further council comments, questions?
I guess I'd like to put out there that Councilman Vilhauer is available Wednesday, Thursday, and Friday of that week. Could we maybe, if you could look at your calendars and let me know if Wednesday, Thursday, or Friday would work, so I can let Jeff know. You'll just make it work. Okay, so Wednesday. So that'd be the 11th? I don't know my calendar. Wednesday the 11th. Do we prefer morning or afternoon?
Well, depends if you're buying breakfast or dinner.
I will make something wonderful just for you. Afternoon? Is that?
You notice I like treats.
What do you mean? I know what you're talking.
Does that work for you all down there? The 11th in the afternoon-ish? Okay, the 11th? All right, I will get a hold of Jeff, and we will schedule it, and we'll get an agenda out as it gets closer. Awesome.
I will even open this up, not just for council, for council, I encourage you, if there's something that we need to discuss at this, we can. If the public has had any ideas as well, I mean, your input is always welcome with anything that the council does. So, with that, the next topic is items for future agendas. This was also brought to us by City Manager Amanda Mack, and just any topics that any of us would like to see on a future work session, or something that you feel needs an opportunity to be vetted a little bit more than what we currently do. So if anyone has any ideas, you can bring them up now, or just you're encouraged to contact our city manager, Councilman Danforth.
I do have a question, probably of Amanda, and maybe it's up. But as we have ideas or thoughts or communications to us that might prompt a some discussion, maybe about whether it be administratively or maybe it be ordinance language discussion. How do you want that? Do you want that just presented to you as an email saying, here's, some of them are going to be little items, some are going to be bigger items?
Yeah, I think
Just
that's,
to get
I
it
think
presented
that's the
to you
best.
and
And
let it
then
go
we
from there.
can disseminate it however. It'd be helpful if in that correspondence, if you give a preference, like, I'd like to see this at a work session, I'd like to see this on a planning commission, for example, just so we understand the priority of it. But yeah, I think that's a good way to start.
Okay, so because those things are starting to happen now
Yep.
as
Yeah,
we
sure.
were heading into the election, people talk to you, and then now that, we are seated,
Uh-huh.
so there's a lot of things that just get thrown at you. And so maybe the best point is to get it sent to you with description or whatever,
Yes.
and you get it out to whomever within the departments and
Yes.
such. Okay.
Yep.
All right, thank you.
Thank you very much. Any further questions or comments? Seeing none, we'll open it up for public comment. If anyone is here to speak to the council, this is your opportunity to do so. I don't see anyone coming forward, so we have no need for executive session. With that, I will take a motion to adjourn. Moved by Councilman Bueller, seconded by Councilman Paulson. All those in favor, please say aye. All those opposed, nay. We are out.